Hey guys, I want to show you an opportunity to be free now. And I will explain you all what is in this board in the next minutes in this amazing video about what's like to be a digital nomad and how to become a digital nomad, where we come from and how we were born, and what can you do right now in order to take advantage of this market that is growing and that is transforming the world. Stay in this video and you are going to have your mind blown. Subscribe to the button that is here. And also share with your friends because we are going to have an amazing time sharing together here in the Nomad videos. So let's narrow down this in a very interesting way. What comes to your mind when you imagine a digital nomad probably is like a guy without clothes traveling with a bag like this. That's probably not a digital nomad. And sometimes we also imagine a backpacker, right? Like the backpacker is like the type of person that we imagine when we are like saying, oh, that's a digital nomad. But no, not all the backpackers work.
Okay.
In fact, some of them are volunteers, which is a type of work, of course. Some of them are workers via another platforms. And there is exclusive or a smaller group of people who are actually digital nomads. But amongst the digital nomads, there are many types of people. And to understand that, I want us to go back to the Bedouins. So Bedouins are actually my favorite type of people to compare with the digital nomads because they are actually genius. They broke the geometry, astronomy, astrology, mathematics, trigonometry, and whatever ometry you have thanks to their invention, their curiosity, and their creativity. And thanks to them, we actually have technology. That's why it's not weird that most of digital nomads are actually people into the tech business. And this is not hard to explain. The Bedouins were people who have different characteristics. They were curious, they have questions, they have willingness, and they were weirdos. So now this mix is very spicy and it's actually very cool because when you think about like this type of people and this type of like kind of weird people who are traveling the world, discovering places, doing things, you might think, okay, these guys, they need to have guts and they need to have money to travel. I mean, it's not true. You might be a digital nomad, but you don't necessarily make money in the place where you work from. In fact, some of the digital nomads that we know are people who work remotely or who work for other companies or work for other people. And this is the second thing that is important to learn. To compare these guys, probably you can talk about the call centers, right? And the people who are normally receiving customer service. So these weirdos, they started traveling and discovering places. Thanks to that willingness to discover, first cities were born. And thanks to that first cities that were born, we had commerce, we had food, we had the domestication of many ingredients, and we had wars. Civilization exists thanks to many things, but amongst those things there are of course things that we call negative or that are not so nice to remember, like colonization or like trade of people, goods, and different things, and exploitation. Thanks to that transactions and thanks to all these things, we have the revolutions. Those revolutions are very important and very well defined in history. The Industrial Revolution, the Communications Revolution, the Knowledge Revolution, and right now the 4.0 revolution that I call it the Connections Revolution. What does it mean? Well, before when the Industrial Revolution happened, there were actually nomads going on. Why? Because we had a very bad disease that exterminated over 60 million of Europeans and like killed a lot of people in different regions of the world. And because of this disease, the people who were working before in the fields or in the farms, who were like the feuds and the owners of lands and so on and so on and so on, were basically defeated, and they needed to find a new source of income and a new way of understanding reality. And this is when trade that was invented in the, again, area where the Bedouins were living, with the Sumerians, with the Persians, with the Ottomans, with all these people who were here in the Caucasus, they came on to be important, and they actually created part of what the civilization is right now. Farmers and people from the fields going to towns and to cities, living there and developing infrastructure in order to be safer. And this safety attracted different things that were part of the infrastructure. What parts of the infrastructure were there? Basically education, universities, high schools, and all sorts of education that spread across Europe initially and other places, but they don't come from Europe, they come from Africa, from Mali, then they went to the Middle East, and then they went to Europe. Apart from education, the church, right? Because religion was a way of like maintaining people together and like keeping people as part of society and developing them as an important part of what was called the new family model. The third thing that was important was commerce, as a way to interact and to exchange goods and services between people people. And this commerce was actually what make a new type of people born. They were like the industry or the business owners who were trading with goods from the farms and in the city, like to provide people and to give people like different type of things. And with commerce and with all these three things, the fourth part of this is production as part of the system. This production of part of the system was what we called after or later on industries. Now, what we might think started only in Europe, like actually spread across the world, specifically in the US, and created a huge amount of businessmen that actually transformed forever the world. And they're like actual 4 businessmen that were the ones responsible for creating all what we know right now as the, let's say, capitalistic model, and that actually perpetuated it. Probably you've heard about these names: Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, JP Morgan, and Vanderbilt. Now, who are all these guys? Well, Andrew Carnegie actually had the largest provider of steel, and he became rich after being like super poor. He immigrated from Ireland and he was super poor, and then he became rich thanks to the trains that were built by Vanderbilt and by all his family. And thanks to this, let's say, trade, and thanks to these like alliances, other things started to happen, like the building of cities and the development of other things. Now, JP Morgan is very important for the economical system in the world and also for the capitalistic system, because he is not only the responsible for the modern bank system and for the debit cards and credit cards and savings account and checking account and all these things, but also he had the first company was worth $1 billion, was General Electric, and he was the one who financed Thomas Alva Edison for the spread of the bulb as the way of changing what John D. Rockefeller was good at, that was the kerosene lamps, and what made him rich. And thanks to this whole thing, JP Morgan basically bankrupting John D. Rockefeller, was that oil became so important, because it was a whole thing that happened after a whole telenovela when John D. Rockefeller was crying in his company and asking God for forgiveness and blah 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 blah, and then he discovered oil because it was very volatile. Our friend Henry Ford came and like he wanted to make something very commercial and to take the business out of the Chrysler, and to take the business out of the Chrysler, he started fueling the vehicles with oil. Now, we know this thing, and this part is important. The reason why I extend so much in the explanation on this is because all these things that happened in that time, right, the 1800s, the 1900s, the 2000s, 2004, led to something that is important that we're going to mention later on. So these first guys created a model that is called capitalism, right? Now, after the Industrial Revolution, what happened was the communications revolution. ARPANET started off as a project of the government of the US, and ARPANET was basically a private network that after the war the US developed, just because of they were fearing, let's say, a communications war in which their communication systems were going to be hacked or intervened or shut down. So initially this ARPANET was a project from the US to actually create, let's say, some type of communication, internal communication between the government systems. And this ARPANET network was basically a one DNS or a one server that was working for one exclusive system. Now, with this whole ARPANET revolution, and other companies started replicating this and they started creating their own ARPANET networks, and this led to something that was then developed between the Berkeley and Stanford University, that was the internet. The first connection of internet, that is basically two ARPANET networks connected, happened between these two guys. And then after that was when we developed the first website that was basically to explain what internet was about and how companies could benefit from it. So after ARPANET we come to internet, after internet we come to the email that revolution the communications in the world. By the way, the reason why after the ads you have a last, let's say, name of the email is because that last name of the email is the name of the server or the network that is providing that communication. So Hotmail is Microsoft, Gmail is Gmail, IBM, Circolo, all types of companies are having or were having their own network of servers to provide that service. Now we have server providers, and this led us to the thing that happened after the email, that was basically the IP and the possibility of having and let's say a unique address online to identify us. What happened with this is that this communications revolution led to control, and this control led to something that was called Web 2. And Web 2 is the communication that happened when social media appears, and when we have, for example, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all these other guys coming and giving you the power to give opinions and to tell what you think or to search for your things. This whole thing about Web 2 and about the way how communications revolutionized the world also gave people the ability and the opportunity to connect with more people and small companies to actually sell worldwide. This whole communications revolution was something that we experienced between the 1990s and the 2006. Then a very brief part of the revolution came, and it was the knowledge revolution. What was the knowledge revolution? Well, basically data, right? People trying to have data, and people trying to connect, and people trying to store information and to get information from people in order to do data analysis, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and whatever other type of sciences that come from there. But also ways of people to understand what was going on in the world and to collect data in order to prevent disasters, in order to do government, management of companies, creation of products, and transformation. Now, this all sounds super amazing, but what happened was that the monopoly was taking over, and like some companies started like taking advantage of this. Like one of the most popular cases is the e-commerce platforms and how they were meant to give power to people to actually distribute their products and to actually connect thanks to the information that they were getting from social media and from internet. But this whole thing now is monopolized by Amazon or by Alibaba, right? Now, we have this third thing. What happened after? Before we go to the 4.0, that is the connections revolution, what happened after was that in the late 2000s, more or less the middle of the 2000s, we have something going on that was the recession in the US. That recession in the US led to people to blame the banks, to criticize the system, to think about different ways of doing things, and this is when Web3 comes. So what we call Web3 is basically giving people back the power to create their own networks, to have their own networks and to maintain them together and connect through that. But Web3 was not the only thing that started going on. We saw in statistics early in 2007 how people in the US were not buying that many houses anymore. Then in 2011, we saw how people were deciding not to have kids. Then we saw in 2013 how people were basically leaving universities and fleeing to start their own companies and starting their own businesses. But then something was missing, and that thing that was missing is that many people were suddenly starting to travel and connect and offer services online for the needs that now companies had regarding social media and regarding e-commerce and regarding technical things. And these people who started traveling and started creating a community. This community is connected to what happened in 1937 after the war. That was basically what led Europeans and people from the global north to try to travel in order to understand cultures. Now imagine this whole thing, that's what's going on from 1937, combined with this whole need of offering services in a different way. People live in the companies, people live in universities, people live in things, led to something that is called the Digital Nomads movement. And for us to understand this, just imagine we have a lot of people who are rebels and who are trying to understand the world in their own terms, who understand that they don't want to go 2 hours to a place to work. They don't want to be 5 hours in traffic. They don't want to miss out the time with their families, with their friends, with their people. And they want to seek for discomfort at the time that they find their own stability and their own balance. These people, these nomad travelers, these remote workers were basically weirdos. Curious, with questions, with willingness, and weirdos. These weirdos were or started off being a very small movement that everybody was ignoring. Over 10,000 people only in 2007, over 100,000 people in 2013, over 1 million people in 2015, over 2 million people in 2017, and before COVID there were 8 million people. And today they grew to be 37 million people. These 37 million people is, imagine the 40th, if we were a nation, the 40th nation in the world, just below Canada and above Morocco. We would be, of course, as well, the 38th country if we were like measured by income, given the fact that nomads or digital nomads have or get a normal income of more or less a medium income of more or less $2,000 a month. So meaning that these people now have acquisition power, can pay for the things, can travel, and understand they have a flexible mind. This for many years was diminished. It means that many companies were saying, no, these guys are crazy. How they think that we're going to pay for their vacations, because that was the whole concept. People are traveling, so we will have just to pay for them to be somewhere else and so on. That was not like that. Nomads were traveling, deciding to have their own freedom, their own possibilities, deciding to do whatever they want to do at the time that they can actually provide services and being experts and study as they're traveling. They can have another type of education that is not only concept but also context. These people, digital nomads, are basically the future. And that future is what I want you to keep in mind. Imagine that 37 million people currently in the world are living and paying for expenses in different countries, contributing to the economy and doing things with professional presentation, but also with a lot of quality and with well-being. Imagine that this is going to be transforming the way how public policies are made. How many countries have issued digital nomad visas or flexible visas for remote workers or digital nomads? Well, more than 50 countries in the world. How many countries are preparing visa policies in order to make the nomads welcome? More than 60 countries currently. How many people are going to start traveling? How much is the contribution to the economy of the digital nomads industry? $787 billion. This is the future, and why nobody's talking about this? Well, it's easy. Companies still want to have control and want to have people in their offices, but this is not going on anymore. The recent energetic crisis in Europe, the recent recession or like winds of recession that are happening in the US, in Europe and Asia and everywhere in the world, and the recent ways how things happened during COVID have told us that we can't live in the same way anymore. Now we have a huge responsibility as digital nomads and also as remote workers, and it's being very mindful about the environment and being very clear about the solutions that we are offering. But this is a whole opportunity for all the people. We have 4 types of employees that are very easy to describe. In this case, the normal employees, the contractors, the remote workers, and the digital nomads. And the cool thing is that it doesn't matter who you are, and doesn't matter where you are, and doesn't matter what type of job you have, your life is going to be affected positively by the new policies and by the new ways how people are going to start living thanks to digital nomads. Our revolution is going to transform the industry. Nomadpreneurs are going to start rising. People are going to start investing in companies that are deciding to go remote, work from home or to work from different places. And people now have a different mindset. The mindset of believing that when we are together, we can change the world. And this is the connections revolution. It's not only about Web3. It's not only about blockchain. It's not only about transforming social media and connecting people and having different types of entrepreneurs who are actually now showing also their real lives. This is about people and how people are going to connect in the next generation, in the next year, in order to make a change. So my invitation for you is to analyze if you want to become a digital nomad, to stay tuned here, to connect, to transform, and to find information about what's going to be for the next year and industry that can actually help you from everywhere in the world to improve your economical status, the time that you spend with your family, and the way how you see life. I see you in the next video.